Hi, I'm Karen McKee. In this video, I want to focus on the sentence, and as the title suggests, explore some sentence structures that can be useful in scientific writing. Many of us don't really think a lot about sentences. We string them together and hope they tell a good story. However, sentences are the basic building blocks of our writing and deserve some in-depth scrutiny. In fact, authors who write efficiently and effortlessly have in their toolbox a repertoire of sentence forms that they've mastered. One sentence form that can be useful in scientific writing relates to the art of argument. In their book, They Say, I Say, The Moves That Matter in Persuasive Writing, authors Graff and Birkenstein describe a sentence structure in which conventional wisdom is stated, followed by a statement of disagreement. These authors present a basic template for developing a cogent argument in any academic writing, which can be summarized like this. They say that, insert assertion, but I say, insert counterargument. The essence of their rhetorical model is that the writer not only makes a well-supported claim, I say, they do so by stating that claim in relation to the claims of others, they say. In a scientific paper, you can use this rhetorical technique to contrast your interpretation with that of other researchers. For example, in this paper excerpt, the authors offer an alternative explanation for how coral reefs grow vertically, but first acknowledge the validity of the traditional viewpoint. There is good evidence in some areas that reefs do consist of vertically building coralgal framework, especially barrier reefs and atolls in the Indo-Pacific. Then the authors present their counter-argument. But in an increasing number of areas, coring has shown that not all reefs develop this way. Studies of fringing reefs in the tropical western Atlantic in particular are beginning to show that hurricanes play a prominent role. They then proceed to explain their findings that show how hurricane-driven debris contributes to vertical accretion of coral reefs. This rhetorical technique can be used to articulate the arguments and counterarguments in the literature review section, which sets the stage for your study. Here's another example from a paper that reviewed how plants influence resilience of coastal wetlands to sea level rise. Although some investigations have focused exclusively on physical processes such as mineral sedimentation and erosion, there is increasing evidence that plants play a key role in vertical land development and capacity of coastal wetlands to keep pace with sea level rise. The first part of the sentence describes what processes others have traditionally focused on, while the second half describes evidence for a biological process, which is the focus of the review. Such an approach tells the reader that you are about to challenge tradition and present something new and worth considering. Another interesting and useful type of sentence is one that covers several time zones, past, present, and future. In the movie Back to the Future, the character George McFly says to Marty, "Last night Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan and told me that if I did not take Lorraine out, that he'd melt my brain." This quote is an example of a time-traveling sentence. It takes the listener from the past, last night's visit from Darth Vader, to future consequences, a date with Lorraine versus brain melting. Such sentences can generate curiosity and anticipation in the reader. As first sentences in a story, they would stimulate the desire to read on and discover what happens next. Can we use this form in scientific writing? Yes. Consider the first line in Darwin's treatise on the origin of species, which was also written in this time-traveling form. When on board HMS Beagle as naturalist, I was much struck with certain facts in the distribution of the inhabitants of South America and in the geological relations of the present to the past inhabitants of that continent. This sentence starts the reader in Darwin's past, his journey on the Beagle, and then refers to the distant geological past and how it relates to the present situation. In fact, I think most of us have used this sentence form at one time or another, but never really contemplated what we were doing. For example, after preconditioning the plants for 2 weeks to ambient conditions in the growth facility, we applied the flooding treatments, which were designed to simulate future sea level rise scenarios predicted for the end of the 21st century. This sentence takes the reader from the past through another point in the recent past and ends in the far future. An advantage of this sentence form is that it forces you to connect several events separated in time in a single sentence instead of a long paragraph. If done well, it not only saves space, but can lead to an elegant and concise summary. These sentence types are clearly useful but require some practice to be able to implement successfully, in both fiction and in scientific writing. The point of practicing with these templates is that when you sit down to write your next paper, these sentence forms will already be in your repertoire. Practicing sentence forms is comparable to practicing scales as a musician. If you practice writing different sentence forms, you will be able to automatically apply those forms when writing your manuscript. You can practice writing such sentences by making up a few lines, using a fictional or a real situation. It's easiest if you restrict yourself to a specific opening word or phrase to begin, such as, after observing, or had we. For example, after observing the response under control conditions for 1 hour, we then applied the experimental treatments. Had we not included soil controls, our conclusions would have been different. Another type of opening can help you compare and contrast your work with other studies. Objections to this point of view include, or alternative explanations for this outcome are. Writing such a sentence requires you to seek out and acknowledge other possible outcomes or opinions, yielding a richer, more in-depth exploration of the topic. There are other helpful sentence templates which I've described in a previous video. I'll put a link to it in the description. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like this video if you found the information helpful.